Part 1. The Hare and the Bean. The citadel was dark, and the heroes were sleeping. When they breathed, it sounded as if they were testing the air for dragon smoke. On their sofas of spice and feathers, the concubines also slept fretfully. In those days, the earth was still flat, and people dreamed often of falling over edges. Blacksmiths hammered the edge serpent on the anvils of their closed eyelids. Wheelwrights rolled it, tail in mouth, down the cart roads of their slumber. Cooks roasted it in dream pits. Seamstresses sewed it to the badger hides that covered them. The court necromancer traced its contours in the constellation of straw on which he tossed. Only the babes in the nursery lay peacefully, passive even to the fleas that supped on their tenderness. King Alabar did not sleep at all. He was as awake as the guards at the gate, more awake actually, for the guards mused dreamily about mead, boiled beets, and captive women as their eyes patrolled the forested horizon, while the king was as conscious as an unsheathed knife, coldly conscious and warmly troubled. Beside him, inside the ermine blankets, his great hound Mick and his wife Alma snoozed the night away, oblivious to their lord's distress. Well, let them snore, for neither the dog's tongue nor the wife's could lap the furrows from his brow, although he had sent for Alma that evening mainly because of her tongue. Alma's mouth, freshly outlined with beet paint, was capable of locking him in a carnal embrace that, while it endured, forbade any thought of the coils beyond the brink. Alas, it could endure but for so long, and no sooner was Alma hiccuping the mushroom scent of his spurt than he was regretting his choice. He should have summoned Wren, his favorite wife, for though Wren lacked Alma's special sexual skills, she knew his heart. He could confide in Wren without fear that his disclosures would be woven into common gossip on the concubines' looms. Alabar's castle, which in fact was a simple fort of stone and wood surrounded by a fence of tree trunks, contained treasures, not the least of which was a slab of polished glass that had come all the way from Egypt to show the king his face. The concubines adored this magic glass, and Alabar, whose face was so obscured by whiskers that its reflection offered a minimum of contemplative reward, was content to leave it in their quarters, where they would spend hours each day gazing at the wonders that it reproduced. Once, a very young concubine named Frol had dropped the mirror, breaking off a corner of it. The council had wanted to banish her into the forest, where wolves or warriors from a neighboring domain might suck her bones. But Alabar had intervened, limiting her punishment to 30 lashes. Later, when her wounds had healed, she bore him fine twin sons. From that time on, however, the king visited the harem each new moon to make certain that the looking glass had not lost its abilities. Now, on this day, the new moon of the calendar part we know as September, when Alabar conducted his routine inspections, he looked into the mirror longer, more intently than usual. Something in the secrets and shadows of the imperfectly polished surface had caught his eye. He stared, and as he stared, his pulse began to run away with itself. He carried the glass to an open window where refracting sparks of sunshine enlivened its ground, but refused to alter its message. "So soon?" he whispered as he tilted the mirror. Another angle, the same result. Perhaps the glass is tricking me, he thought. Magic things are fond of deceptions. Although the day was rather balmy, he pulled up the hood of his rough linen cloak, and blushing like Blood's rich uncle, thrust the mirror into the hands of the nearest concubine, who happened to be Frol. The other women gasped. They rushed to relieve her of the precious object. Alabar left the room. With some difficulty, for others tried to insist on accompanying him, the king excused himself from court and took the giant dog Mick for a romp outside the citadel gate. Circuitously, he made his way into the woods to a spring he knew. There he fell to his knees and bent close to the water as if to drink. Smothered under a swirl of cloudy mixtures, his reflection only spasmodically came into focus. Yet among the bubbles, twigs, and jumbled particles of light and color, he saw it once more, a hair as white as the snow that a swan has flown over. It spiraled from his right temple. Undirected and unencumbered by thought, King Alabar's hand shot out as if to ward off an enemy's blow. He yanked the hair from its mooring, examined as one might examine a killed snake, and after glancing over his shoulder to assure that none save Mick was his witness, flicked it into the spring, in whose waters it twisted and twirled for a long while before sinking out of sight. Alma gnashed her semen-pressed teeth in her sleep. Each distant owl note caused Mick to twitch. Between them, Alabar lay wide-eyed, his war-marked hands caressing the fur covers for comfort. "It is with shame and fear that I rest tonight," thought the king. "The way bewilderment lies upon me, I have no need of blanket." In Alabar's kingdom, a minute city-state, a tribe, if you will, it was the custom to put the king to death at the first sign of old age. Kings were permitted to rule only so long as they retained their strength and vigor. Regarding its rulers as semi-divine, god-men upon whom the course of nature depended, the clan believed widespread catastrophes would result from the gradual enfeeblement of the ruler and the final extinction of his powers in death. The only way to avert those calamities was to kill the king as soon as he showed symptoms of decay, so that his soul might be transferred to a vigorous young successor before it had been impaired. One of the fatal signals of fading power was the king's incapacity to satisfy the sexual passions of his wives. Another was the debut of wrinkles or gray hairs with their indiscreet announcement of decline. Heretofore, Alabar had not considered this tradition unfair. After all, were the king allowed to grow senile and ill, would not his weakness infect his domain, interfering with the multiplication of cattle, causing beet crops to rot in the fields, disabling the men in battle, and generally perpetuating disease, delirium, and infertility among those whom he ruled? And did not all intelligent peoples, which left out the Romans, hold this to be true? Why, in some nearby kingdoms, a slight blemish on the royal body, such as the loss of a tooth, was enough to bring about the death sentence. In Alabar city, the execution was a ceremony of much dignity and aesthetic weight, the king's number one wife bearing the responsibility for delivering to her husband's lips the poisoned egg. Among less civilized peoples in the region, the ruler was dispatched by the crude, though perfectly sufficient, process of being knocked on the head. Heretofore, the ritual of putting the king to death had seemed to Alabar natural, inevitable, and just. But tonight he cursed that cruelly traitorous strand, that hoary banderole of mortality that waved so thoughtlessly from an otherwise dark temple, that skinny silver scroll upon which was written in letters bold enough for all of nature to read, an invitation to the burial mound. O most unwelcome hair! From the lemony southern islands to the mountainous haunts of trolls, There was no honest person who could call King Alabar a coward. Numerous times he had risked his life in combat, exhilarant the cry of his charge. And why not? What was there in death to fear? Death was this world's tribute and the other world's bequest. To shun it was to cheat both sides. In yanking out the gray hair, he felt that he had betrayed his people, his gods, and himself. Himself? Self? What did that mean? Alabar pounded the pillow with his head, causing Mick to growl softly, and Alma to flail both arms, although she did not surface from that sea without fish. At first light, ere a rooster had reached the doodle part of his cock-a-doodle-doo, Alabar shook Alma awake, ordering her back to the harem, and requesting that she send Wren in her stead. "What are you grinning at?" "My lord, I am merely happy to notice that you have regained your appetites." "What are you insinuating, woman?" "Nothing, my lord." "What?" He seized her by her yellow braids. "Don't be angry, sire. It is just that some of your wives grumble among themselves that you have neglected them of late." The king released her. Automatically, he raised his fist to the temple where the white hair had sprouted. Were another about to emerge, he would squash it in its follicle. Have they spoken of this to the council?" "Oh, no, my lord. It has not come to that. To tell the truth, I think they are merely peevish because you spend your best seed in that clumsy little cunt Frol." In the depths of his tangled beard, Alabar managed half a smile. Young Frol was pregnant again, and from the size of her belly there developed therein a second set of twins. Kissing had yet to be discovered in Europe, alas, so Alabar rubbed Alma's nose with his own. "My balls are so heavy I cannot leave the bed. Quickly now, fetch me Wren." As soon as she had gone, he arose and forced open the massive oak window. While Mick licked his feet, he uttered a succession of prayers to the rapidly diminishing sparkle of the morning star. Those whom Alabar governed were a blonde race, of such recent northern origin that snow trolls and mystical red toadstools still figured in the tales the elders told around the fires. Although the king himself, save for that morbid filament he had drowned in the spring, was on the dusky side. Wren, the daughter of a southern chieftain slain in battle by Alabar's predecessor, was even duskier. "The only dark meat in the king's larder," some of the warriors joked. Her coloration was one reason he favored her. More importantly, however, he loved her good sense, although in that place, in that time, good sense was considered no more a virtue in a wife than love in a king. Almost advanced advertising must have been effective, for Wren arrived in the royal chamber already nude and lathered, wine in her cheeks. Thus she was surprised to find her husband fully clothed, sitting with his hound on the great bear rug at the foot of his bed. I am sorry, my lord," she stammered. The vintner in her veins pressed a more ruddy grape. "I was informed that you had summoned me." "That I did, dear Wren. Please come sit at my side." "Well, all right, of course. But first let me fetch my robe. I've left it in the anteroom." Smiling at her decorum, Alabar started to detain her. Even in his agitated mood, he could admire this walking flower of intelligent pink, this industry of honey and brine. But the image of the hair cast its shadow, and he allowed her to dress. He petted the dog. "So, you plucked it," she said, after he had related the events of the previous day. "Yes, I did." "Plucked it?" "Yes." "But why?" "I hoped that you could help me answer that." Wren shook her head of skunk black curls. She appeared puzzled. No, my lord, I think not. I have never met nor heard story of one who so resisted fate. Surely I am not the first, said Alabar. If so, I must be madman as well as coward. Oh, neither, my Alabar. Then what? He watched dispassionately while Mick got up, yawned, stretched, and lumbered to a far corner of the room to relieve himself. Tell me, Wren, what do you believe awaits you after you die? Awaits me? Me, Wren? I have never pondered what death might hold for this one person, born Renna of Pindus, now Wren, wife of Alabar. Death is not a personal matter, is it? It is the business of the clan. Our clan is responsible for maintaining the continuity of our race against the terrible whims of heaven and earth. And since the clan is weakened by the loss of one of its members, any death can be an ordeal for the whole. The king nodded. No gray hair nodded with him. Though not having viewed himself that morning, he could not be certain of that. Which explains why our people hold such elaborate and energetic funerals. We entertain the immortals in order that they might be persuaded to help us recover the strength and unity stolen from us by death. However, and this occurred to me only last night as I lay abed undreaming, the clan usually succeeds in closing that breach death tore in its defenses. But what of the one who died? In some regions, they believe that he will pop up again in springtime like a crocus, but never have I observed such a blooming. In the past, I have thought, I shall entrust myself to whoever is more powerful in the next world, the gods or the demons. Yet now, my own speedy demise a rising possibility, I do not willingly submit to playing the part of prize in an otherworldly tug of war. Is this blasphemy, my lord? I think not. Those who crafted me, be they gods or demons, crafted this mind that shapes my resistance to their schemes. Surely they were wise enough at the wheel where I was thrown to anticipate future resistance in the heart they were a-building. Alabar looked at her hopefully. Can you not agree? Wren placed her own soft hand upon Mick's coat. At her touch, the huge hound seemed almost to purr. I can neither agree nor disagree. I came here this dawn a quarter asleep, expecting to have my furrow plowed, only to have you sow in my mind such strange ideas. She gave her fingers to Mick so that he might affectionately wet them. Perhaps, said Alabar, I ought to turn to the necromancer for advice. No, no, Alabar, do not. Please do not. Indeed, why? This is hard for me to express, my lord, but I shall try. The kings of your ancestors have been celebrated around many a bonfire, but celebrated for cunning and for brawn. Wisdom, true knowledge, has been the province of the necromancer alone. You have changed all that, and Noog does not like it. You must forgive what I am about to say, for it is fact. There are men inside these city walls more powerfully built than you, Alabar, more adept with the spear, men who can run faster, hurl a stone farther, face an awesome enemy with an equal absence of trembling, and pacify a harem with as sturdy a shaft. But you, well, while I cannot imagine how you acquired it, you have a brain. Time and time again, you have demonstrated your unusual ability to see inside of men and to interpret the silent pleas they aim at the stars. In the past, many kings have ruled this people. You have governed them. Governed? It is a Hellenic word. Hellenic. Alabar closed his eyes and thought of what he had heard of the Hellenic city-states far to the southeast, near the edge of the earth, how glorious they were rumored to have been, how wealthy and learned and proud of their arts. Long ago, northern tribes, not unlike his ancestors, had sacked them. What good was righteous governing if rough people could come along at will and chop you up? A Hellenic word meaning to exercise a directing influence. That you have done. The heroics of past rulers only kept your kingdom in a state of agitation. You have calmed it, and Noog resents you for that, because as a result of your reasonable leadership, the necromancer is less necessary and less admired. I am not surprised. There is a limit to the admiration we may hold for a man who spends his waking hours poking the contents of chickens with a stick. Divination has its worth. Yes, and so perhaps does the elimination of time-trapped kings. Yet rebellion stirs within me this daybreak. I appreciate your warning about Noog. Were I to tell him what I am about to tell you, dear Wren, I would be dining on bitter egg ere the moon is ripe. I have seen kings bite that egg, watch them turn green as ivy leaves, and flap about the yard like freshly beheaded fowl, and all the while the populace onlooking as if it were a bear and dog match. Now, in the eyes of the stars, men may be no more exalted than beasts, and kingly men no worthier than the wretched. Well, forgive me. Perhaps the sap of that silver hair has made me drunk from inside my skull, but I am seized with desire to be something more, something whose echo can drown out the rattle of death. As Wren blinked her bituminous lashes at his queer behavior, Alabar stood, disrobed, and turned slowly around and around before her like prime merchandise at a slave market. Save for the occasional phosphorus mark where some blade had stung him, his body was smooth and tan, braided with muscle, supple, quick, neither as massive nor as hairy as many warriors who had marched behind him. His chestnut mane was chopped an inch below the ears. His beard was shaggy and full, less prominent than her own southern model. Maybe there is simply more to whiff in tropic climes. His nose was banded at the bridge with a ribbon of scar tissue. His eyes, bright as torches in an ice cave, were so blue they seemed on certain days to bleed into the sky. Alabar's mouth, what could be glimpsed of it through the whiskers, was thinner than the meaty mouths of his fellows, and at the same time less crude. It reminded Wren of her late father's mouth, and she admired it most of all. On several occasions in his company, she had come within a pucker of discovering kissing. When he had completed his exhibition, he planted a palm against each of his jowls and said in a voice both defiant and shaky, "This man before you is part of the community, the race, and the species, yet is somehow separate from them. That notion shocks you, I can see. But, Wren, I cannot tolerate the passive obliteration of all that I am to myself. My deeds have not been so small that they will never be recalled around the fires, yet that fails to satisfy my longing. My life is not merely a public phenomenon. It is a solitary adventure as well." He slapped his thighs. "It is with difficulty that I imagine this familiar body gone cold. These limbs, this trunk, the heart that drums, they urge me against all my training to prevail over submission to the collective destiny." Wren's mouth opened as tentatively as a mollusk shell. "Vanity?" she asked. A wife, even in shock, she made certain that it was less an accusation than a query. "Vanity? Vanity. I am unsure. It feels different from vanity. If I be but vain, then the demons will kick my ghost from pit to pit. In my defense, I can say only this. I have fought for my people and would fight for them again. Let them name the foe. but I am not ready to have them place the crown on another's noggin, though his be as yellow as sulphur and mine whiter than any winter's drift." For a long while, Wren sat quietly, poised as if she were a blood drop on the point of a dagger. Then she said, "You seem to value my opinion, my lord. This, then, I say to you. It would be painful for me to pass you the poison. I would ache should I find your body still and icy, even though it meant that our clan might easier endure. Your words puzzle me no end, but I trust you as I have trusted no other save my father. If survival through deception be your wish, then I shall endeavor to support the deceit. Most assuredly, I shall refrain from any mention of it." "It is no major deceit. Unless my parents lied, I have lived through but 37 feasts of feasts. I remain young and able, no matter what that treacherous hare did shout." Again he slapped his thighs. Then all at once the bluster drained out of him. "Ah, but Wren, you may not have long to guard our secret. I have observed the habits of hares, and before many mornings there will arrive another, as colorless as that last, and another, like doves at a roost. Every single day I would have to regard my head in the looking-glass, yet I cannot retrieve the glass from the concubines without raising suspicion. You are more than loyal, but there is little use." He slumped down on the fur beside her. "I will be your mirror," said Wren. He understood, and in gratitude embraced her until at length he felt his humor return. A slow smile bent back his foliage. "I've a mind to lay you down and split you like a rack of mutton. What would you say to that?" "You know very well what I would say. I would say those half-formed, half-crazed words the she-panther speaks when in the delirium of her seasonal heat she is mounted by her mate." Alabar moved to shut the window against the beginning buzz and bustle of the city day. Then he thought better of it and left it wide. It would be to his advantage, he reasoned, should the populace overhear she-panther yowls emanating from his chamber. Days grew shorter. The citadel was hidden by morning fogs. Beets, resembling the hearts of gnomes, were piled in the storage cellars. Ducks lined up to buy their tickets to southern swamps. Mead was jugged, blades and leathers oiled. Wolves made clouds when they sang at night. Maybe that was where the fogs came from. Everywhere there were sounds of husks cracking, virgins dancing, the rush of bees on last-minute shopping sprees, the roar of altars ablaze with some sacrifice. King Alabar was likewise undergoing a season change. True to her word, Wren was his mirror, and approximately once a week she discovered a white settler aspiring to colonize the shady, hirsute shores. She drove it promptly out of the neighborhood. More pensive than ever, Alabar shared his thoughts with her. "I think I am seeking something," he confessed once as they stood alone in the western watchtower, overseeing from a bloodless distance the butchering of skinny beef. "What I seek is neither spoils nor territory, nor wives, nor new glory, nor, for the matter, merely a lengthened life. What I seek never was, not on land or sea." What he sought was to become something singular out of his singular experience, and labor as she might, Wren could not understand. If the notion of an individual resisting death for his own sake was foreign to her, as indeed it would have been to anyone in that milieu, the concept of the uniqueness of a single human life was alien to the point of babble. Preferring the chaos down in the cattle pens to her husband's God-offending nonsense, she shut it out entirely and yelled encouragement to the butchers. Yet Wren served Alabar in ways beyond the call of duty. In an attempt to prove his stamina, the king set upon his harem like a starving rat let loose in a peach barrel. Night after night he rooted, rolled, and reamed. He climbed delicately upon Froll's swollen belly. He left June and Helga complaining of soreness in their nether regions. He generated funky auroras around the bodies of Ruba and Mag. He gave Alma a taste of her own medicine. Each night, when he had done with one or the other of them, he would rub their noses, tug their blonde braids, and send them back to their quarters to fetch Wren. While Alabar, exhausted, lay beside her panting and making imprudent comments such as, "Wives are wonderful, but why did I have to accumulate so many?" Wren would fake her lioness cries. Mornings, while he dreamed of the relative tranquility of war, she would fake them again. In time, the subterfuge shamed them both so deeply they could scarcely bear to look at each other. It was actually a relief when it was brought to an end. Noog the necromancer paid close attention to the king's activities. He had done so for years. He had chronicled Alabar's gradually declining sexual enthusiasm, so the desperation implicit in the sudden reversal was not lost on him. When he read verification of his suspicions in the intestinal texts of several hens, he decided to see for himself. It so happened that on the morning that Noog stole up to the royal window after bribing a guard with a glass bead, Alabar and Wren were actually making love. Her phony demonstrations had excited him that dawn. After all, he cared for her above any other. So he had touched her stomach with uncommon tenderness, and soon her groans were being uttered in earnest. Disappointed, Noog was about to turn away when the magpie that rode upon his shoulder abruptly took flight and swooped into the king's chamber. Undetected as yet by the copulating couple, a long curly hair as bright as an icicle had unfurled during the night in Alabar's beard. The magpie flew directly to the hair, pulled it free with its beak, and delivered it into the gizzard-stained hands of the magician.